we're getting into the thing where like it's less about less about investing, less about returns, and less about earning money, but more about actually use cases.
Bravery on, stay aware, stay ahead, stay on. News flows, AI scanning, markets breathe, blockchains running.
This is Variant Studios. My name is Urian Benconsejo, known by many as Yuri, and today we have the one and only Wei, CEO of Coins.ph, one of the largest crypto exchanges in the Philippines. But before we start the interview, of course, just a disclaimer, this is not financial advice, just an interview with Wei to understand the business of Coins.ph, his thoughts on the market, and everything in between. Wei, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, very nice to talk to you guys here.
Yeah, definitely. So we usually like to start off on a very light note before we get into the mechanics of the market and everything. Our first question is designed to bring back hopefully a little bit of nostalgia. Um, what did your parents teach you about money, and what was maybe a childhood purchase you could never forget?
What my parents taught me about money is that don't have debt and always save. So I've been instilled with not carrying debt and then always focus on saving. I think, and then not spending money. Basically, I mean, at the end of the day, it's basically spending within your proportion. But then the best way to is, and then what is it? There's a better way to. There's a better method to control your spending. What is it? How do I want to say this? The best way to stay within your limits on spending is to not spend at all. so it's like, unless you absolutely need it, or you have enough resources where you don't care, then don't spend. That's the best way to save. And then another one is like, don't carry debt that you can't handle. Don't carry debt. I think those are the two best things. And then one childhood purchase that I always remember is my very first Nintendo machine, like way back in the day, the original NES system, where you go up, up, down, down, left, right, select, start. Yeah.
That's really cool. And also very interesting as well because, like, as you know, crypto blockchain right now, there's a lot of perk dexes out there, so everything is leveraged. It's really refreshing to stay to hear something about like staying within your means. Our next question is a little bit more about your experience before Coins.ph. So before the company, what were you doing? Could you give us a snapshot? How do you discover crypto and blockchain?
Yeah. So I started all. I joined. So I what is that? I led the acquisition of Coins from Gojek back in 2022. And then I became the CEO of Coins after we finished the acquisition of the company from Gojek. So, and then prior to Coins.ph, I was actually the CFO at Binance. And then Binance was my very first job in crypto. And then I had joined Binance the summer of 2018. So quite early, from a cycle perspective. But at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so late. Bitcoin's already at like $5,000. I'm so late to the game. I had learned about Bitcoin when it was still at like $100, right? So for me, that was when I sort of got into crypto. And then prior to Coins, I was actually CFO at several technology companies based in Asia. And then the more interesting one is actually Coins was actually the second acquisition that I did. The first acquisition was actually a US-based company called Grinder, where I bought that business back in 2016 and then turned it around and then ran that company for about 2.5 years. And then it was actually, I would say, more of like a professional financial manager, sort of managerial background with some deal expertise before I sort of got into crypto. And then my experience at Binance, I think, really shaped how I think about crypto as a whole, and then how I think about sort of the future of money as a whole. And also, lastly, I think more importantly, how I think about the impact that crypto can make on not just money, but or rather the impact that crypto can make on money in the emerging markets is actually far bigger than in sort of what I call the rich countries.
Yeah, definitely. Also, a lot of people might not know this. A lot of people in the Philippines might not know this, but Coins.ph is global and like it's operational in many different countries as well. Could you talk a little bit more about the international operations?
Yeah. So When Coins was actually founded here in the Philippines in 2014, I think around the same time as Coinbase did in the US. And then it sort of delivered the same services that Coinbase initially did, which is basically allow Filipinos to buy Bitcoin directly by directly depositing money from their bank accounts. And I think I think as a result, we have a lot of happy users. So we still have users that's been with us for almost 7 or 8 years that have actually still kept their Bitcoin on Coins. So for Coins was actually one of the pioneers globally, but as sort of a regional licensed exchange that gave sort of local Filipinos access to Bitcoin. At around the same time, I think we also had a presence in Thailand. So there's a small company in Thailand that we also ran called Coins.co.th that is also a licensed exchange that allows for purchase of a smaller number of cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin, USDT are of that. And then for the last 2 years, we've actually been expanding our operation globally. So globally, we actually operate under a separate domain called Coins.xyz, and then that has fiat functionalities currently in Australia and Brazil, and then also have a global license that we operate under out of Mauritius.
Speaking of access, at the same time, I want to take this opportunity to pivot a little bit because we were in Singapore during Token 2049, and it was
Mhm.
really clear that the buzz was around tokenization and stablecoins. And although it seemed very easy on the outside to launch a stablecoin, could you walk us through maybe the difficulties about launching a stablecoin?
Yeah, I think there's different types of stablecoin. I think the kind that we all kind of refer to are fiat-backed stablecoins. I don't think we're talking about algorithmic stablecoins, and we're not talking about sort of the MakerDAO type of stablecoin where it's sort of Ethereum and collateralized stablecoins. I think the kind of stablecoin that we're basically talking about are fiat-backed stablecoins, and those are stablecoins that are backed by fiat deposits, basically by real money in bank accounts. And to launch that, the hardest thing to do is actually to have a bank that will support it. And I think that's sort of the trouble that, because I was still around for the early days of Tether when I remember people were trying to figure out, okay, which bank holds their dollar deposits? Like, is it a real bank? Is it a Chinese bank? Is it a Taiwan? Like, what's going on here? Like, and I think that's back in the day where you didn't have that much regulatory clarity. So it's sort of like Tether, as I remember back in the day, sort of got chased around the world in terms of banks. Because as soon as a bank found out that the deposits that they're holding is actually being used for a crypto, then the bank would immediately close that bank account. And I think that was something that when I was at Binance, we launched the BUSD stablecoin, and then we had to partner up with a sort of a US based organization. But then sort of as their regulator, which is the New York Department of Financial Services, found out that Paxos was actually doing all this work with Binance, sort of that regulator went and basically shut down that stablecoin. So I think the biggest challenge today is for sort of the fiat-backed stablecoins is actually to find banks that are willing to provide custodial services for those fiat deposits that backs up the stablecoin that gets issued. So I think that, and then that challenge is true for US dollar stablecoins, but it's true for all other currencies as well.
I was recently in talks with Jen of at Philippine Blockchain Week earlier this year, and she described the company's entry into remittances, which I think ties very, very closely to the stablecoin part of your
Mm-hmm.
business. At that time, it was kind of hard to comprehend that remittances could be in crypto. But with the recent partnerships, I think like with Stripe and Western Union and so many other companies, there's a lot of support, I think, for that type of business. I'd love to get your perspective on remittances and how Coins.ph is playing into that type of business.
Yeah, Coins is an absolute pioneer, I think, not just in the Philippines, but also globally on using crypto rails to enable remittance. Coins has been running remittance. We've been running remittance flow through our platform for I think like since 2018, so quite early. And then one of the original use cases for our VASP license with the BSP was to basically test out remittance use cases via crypto rails to lower the cost of remittance and to increase the availability and to increase the transaction time. And then we were a pioneer in this space in that before sort of US dollar stablecoins, XRP, which is the currency under Ripple, was actually the original sort of remittance use case. And then Coins, we partnered up with Ripple back in 2017, 2018. And then through that partnership, we're actually built out our remittance rails, except instead of US dollar stablecoins, we were using XRP then. So even back then, 18, 19, 20, 21, we were basically running remittance flow via sort of Ripple's XRP network so we've actually, I would say, have been one of the early adopters globally. But what really changed the last I would say even 12 months, because we've been post sort of XRP, with more US dollar stable coins coming into the equation, it's just a much more natural currency, right? Because you don't run sort of the price fluctuation a risk that if you use XRP as your intermediary currency. If you use USDT, USDC, PYUSD, or even like FDUSD, which are a lot of the existing US dollar stablecoins that we have listed on our platform, anyone anywhere in the world can send, if you use PYUSD from PayPal, you can send PYUSD into coins, sell down that into pesos, and then use our existing disbursement rails to basically, send that money to the final recipient. And then we can solve all of that because our licenses allows us to basically sell down the stable coins, and it also allows us to disperse to third parties or disperse the last mile. And we actually have built out one of the largest sort of disbursement networks for remittances. So, but what really changed over the last, I think, 12 months is less so about sort of Philippines on the Philippines end, which is in most of these situations we're on the receiving end, is actually from the sending countries. So what you saw is that stablecoins now are legal in the U.S. post the passage of the Genius Act. Stablecoins are legal now in Europe post sort of the MiCA framework that came out end of last year. Stablecoins are becoming legal in Hong Kong and are legal in Singapore. So a lot of sort of these global financial hubs where they're sending money to the Philippines and UAE, that's another sort of major hub. As stablecoins become legal in these regions, then the financial institutions in those regions, the remittance companies in those regions, are basically the early adopters and actually moving those stable coins, moving from their traditional US dollar, SWIFT flow now to US dollar stablecoin flow. So for us, we've been very lucky in terms of capturing a lot of that flow, given that not only can we help you to sell these US dollar stablecoins down into pesos, given the high liquidity and the good pricing on our platform, we can also sort of run the remittance disbursement for you via our sort of payment network here. So I think that is a complete product that we've been able to offer, and net, we enable all of these guys now to remit cheaper and faster, and we're available on the weekends and after hours when banks are closed. So I think a lot of these are the advantages that we have on our platform vis-a-vis sort of the traditional rails that a lot of these guys have been using.
Also, speaking a little bit more about the current trend, which is the Web 2.5, basically profitable businesses with functional business flow and everything about that. I think because a lot of crypto business or a lot of blockchain businesses, they function on very different business tactics and deal flow and everything like that. But remittance has been proven to be a very strong business business field in the Philippines. Asking a little bit more about the adoption side, how have you noticed the Philippines when it comes to crypto or blockchain adoption since the start of Coins.ph until today?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had multiple waves. Like the first wave are definitely sort of like the Bitcoin meetup crowd, right? And I think the second major wave is like the ICO crowd. And then the third wave was actually the GameFi crowd. And I think the GameFi crowd, that was massive. That was, I think, at peak, I would say there's 5 to 10 million sort of crypto users. That's my ballpark estimate, right? Because if you look at the number of Ronin wallets, I mean, they were up to 3 or 4 million, active wallets here in the Philippines. And then for us, for coins, we were getting 500,000 people that was trading on our platform. Basically, they can't try to buy Ethereum to move over to Ronin to basically start buying NFTs to play games. So I think that was the 2021, 2022 sort of peak cycle. And I think we're basically coming into the fourth part of the cycle, which I think is real people with real use cases, and I basically see stable coins and potentially, tokenized securities as sort of like the fifth wave. I'm sorry, the fourth wave, where you're actually getting basically, we're getting into the thing where like it's less about less about investing, less about returns, and less about earning money, but more about actually use cases. And I think that's the key where, like, because for example, I was in Hong Kong 2 weeks ago at the Hong Kong FinTech Festival. And as part of our sort of fintech delegation from Philippines to Hong Kong, we spoke at the Philippine embassy to a lot of OFWs there. And then we had about 200 people come into the room to learn about stablecoins, right? And I think because what we're telling them is like, if you buy your stable coins from a licensed exchange in Hong Kong, you can actually send it to Coins, which is a licensed exchange in the Philippines, and you don't even need to rely on third parties to send money that way, right? And that way, because you personally can own the accounts both in Hong Kong or in Singapore and in the Philippines, and you can basically have U.S. dollars sitting, or U.S. dollar stable coins sitting on your Coins account, and then you can sell that down and then just send that to your relative anytime you want. And I think if you're willing to spend time to learn about it, I think most of them are quite excited to learn about it. And then the next question that comes is like, oh, can I get yield on it? Is this like a bank account, right? So I think it's very much, for people that are willing to learn, they're like, wait a minute, like before I had this like hidden FX cost or hidden sort of a lot of these like hidden, fees, but this one is quite transparent, right? In terms of, and I actually think that's sort of what I call like real world use cases. And I think that's where sort of the next wave of adoption is going to come here in the Philippines.
Going back to Web 2.5, you mentioned tokenized securities and the transition from GameFi. Have you noticed more B2B use cases, or is it still dominated by retailers? Also, do you
Um,
treat remittances as a different type of business, or is that still retail?
Yeah, for me, like the remittance business is very much a B2B business rather than a B2C business. Like for us, I view Coins as more of an enabler, right? We enable the industry to move from traditional dollar rails via banks now to this new dollar rail via stable coins, right? And I think if you just look at the Philippines corridor, there's massive flows that happens on a daily basis, right? And anytime a lot of these companies don't have to stack a ton of working capital, then they save money, right? And then hopefully they can pass that savings to the end user. I think for us here in the Philippines, again, it's actually we're waiting on a couple of approvals from our regulators, but we hope to bring more investment products to the users here, and I think that's where the real innovation is going to come.
Talking a little bit more about the Philippines, a
Mhm.
lot of people a lot of people compare local exchanges to international exchanges, but of course, like under the Philippines, we have VASP requirements and
Mhm.
different requirements, different regulatory requirements. Could you tell us a little bit more about maybe some of the limitations or the nuances of those requirements that people might not know?
Yeah, I think the challenge, I think, for guys like us is that there's a lot of products that's currently out there in the market, whether they're on offshore exchanges or they're on dexes, that the regulators, I think not just here in the Philippines, but in the US and Singapore and Hong Kong, anywhere, that the regulators haven't even caught up on coming out with regulations that can provide, guardrails for these type of products, right? Like, like whether they're crypto backed loan, which we kind of launched earlier this year, right? We launched a loan product backed by your Bitcoin deposits, but our regulator told us to stop offering it because we need to get because we were doing it. We're piecemealing two different products together. Like one is a loan product, one is a crypto product, right? But because the loan that we're offering is an online loan, there's a very specific license that we have to go get to be able to do that, right? Which in my mind is like, it doesn't matter. Like it's a loan, right? We have a vendor that's giving a user a loan that's backed by a Bitcoin that the user has moved over as collateral, right? Like it's not that hard in my mind, but we had to pull that product back, right? And then we also offered a product where we give you a loan and you can use that loan to buy crypto. In fact, basically giving you, about 3 to 4x leverage that you can go long on, right? But from a regulator perspective, it's like, yes, it's 2.5 products, but it's in fact it's a margin trading product. So you have to go get a permission to do that, right? And I think the challenge for us is that we can be. I want to tell people is like our technology and our product is just as advanced as the offshore exchanges. It's just that under the current environment, we need to get approvals to be able to offer those products. Like I would love to be able to offer yield. I would I would love to be able to offer not like 100x margin, but like 3 to 4x, 4 to 5x sort of margin trading products. I would love to be able to offer crypto backed loans. But the thing is that it just takes time for guys like us to get approval from our regulators. And I think the bigger challenge is that some of these products don't even have, like, we don't even know which regulators to go to. Like, for example, we've been seeking permission to offer staking services on our platform for 2 years now. But it's just been kind of like, it's like ping pong exercises by the different agencies, right? In terms of like, and then even for like our peso backed stablecoin, I think, it's almost there, but we've been in the sand, like we submitted the original application back in 2023, right? So I think it's just a lot of time. It just I would say it's challenging, but that's sort of like that's one side of the coin, right? But I think the other side of the coin is that once we do get regulators to sign off on these products, we can offer them in a sustainable way. It's not like, and then we know that this product now can go to market, and then we can actually offer it in perpetuity, like forever, right? It's not like some guy comes, gives you a call, you have to pull that down, or some countries give you a call and you have to get out of that country. I just feel like the way crypto kind of moves is moving from a sort of a unregulated world to a more regulated world. And there's a lot of sort of the risky behaviors that kind of existed the last cycle. I think we probably will see less of that this cycle, just because the nature of it is becoming more mature, and that's the only way for us, I think, to be able to offer this en masse, right? So I think it's a long explanation, but the other explanation I kind of want to say is that regulated businesses, I think, is growing faster, but I think the other area that's growing faster is actually the DEX, the decentralized world. I think that will continue to grow, right? Because that's where you actually do custody your own assets, right? I think that's important, right? Because at the end of the day, crypto is money, right? It is a financial asset. And then if you provide custodian services to a financial asset, I tell people, make sure that this is a regulated entity that you're sending your money into. Because if another FTX type of event happens, then that the regulated entities can get you are protected. You're much better protected under that type of environment, vis-a-vis an unregulated entity.
Before we talk a little bit more about the perp tax, because like that's something I'm really interested in, I want to go back a little bit more to the Philippines, which is Coins.ph is very big on education, and that seems to be like a really tough but necessary part of the GTM strategy. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think the Philippines is in terms of crypto adoption or crypto knowledge, and how can we move to the next level?
I would say it's one of the leaders in Southeast Asia. Just I think for crypto, and I think for tech in general, Philippines is actually on the what I call the leading on the leading end of the curve, due to our language. I think like a lot of the language for crypto is English, right? Like crypto Twitter, crypto social media, YouTube's, a lot of the content that gets made about crypto, the projects that comes out in crypto, most of the common language, the white paper that gets written are in English. And I think because we can communicate, natively in English, we can actually get the concepts a lot faster and quicker without having to read sort of translation. Because translation, doesn't matter how good the translators are, some of the words get lost in translation. Because in crypto, if you notice, like we invent vocabularies, right? And most of these vocabularies are English vocabularies, like Byzantine general's problem. Like, what the heck is that? How do you translate that into into Thai or Vietnamese or Indonesian or Bahasa, right? Like or Chinese or Japanese or Korean, right? Whereas in English, like exactly what people are talking about, right? That's the consensus problem that you have to solve on blockchain, right? So I think we actually pick things up really fast. And that's why you see a lot of projects, a lot of blockchains, they want to use Philippines as one of their sort of key launching markets, because we like projects and blockchains can pick up users quite fast here in the Philippines. I mean, that's on one end, but I think on the other end is we do have a connectivity problem. I think the cost of internet, the access to internet it's still not as good as some of the other countries in our neighboring countries. So we do have sort of like a large chunk of the audience, right? That's not in the cities, that actually just I think is kind of far behind than some of our neighboring countries. So I think we're pretty good at sort of some of the early adopters, and we have some really, we have a good size there. But I think from a sort of overall population perspective, I think we're still lagging. But I think that cause I would attribute to infrastructure, rather than sort of the infrastructure connectivity and access, rather than on anything else.
That's a really good explanation, and it makes it seem like the solution to it is actually a little bit more tangible than we might think. Because like, if the barrier to entry is like English, so that you can understand the concepts and stuff like that, then the next problem would be the infrastructure, and that's something that maybe could come in a form of like access to Starlink, or access to different types
100%.
of internet providers and stuff.
100%. Yep. Like we've been trying to talk a lot to a lot of DPIN projects about like, can you guys get Wi-Fi or a better connection into the provinces? Like I joke around, it's like we have islands, right? And we have ballpark 500,000 fishermen, right? Can you give them Wi-Fi when they're on the water, right? Because there's no connectivity once you're on the water, right? Like if we can figure something like that out, you basically bring access to like 500,000 people, right? And then if there are things that you can do to help them with their productivity by better connectivity, that's a massive. Those are massive advancements.
Yeah, thank you so much on that. And I'm really looking forward to like better internet in the Philippines. Even like paid providers are also sometimes not that good as well. Sometimes you pay like a couple of thousand pesos a month and you still don't get good connection. It's a bit choppy at times. But
Yeah.
moving a little bit more into
When we
sorry,
have
please
better
continue.
resources, we're gonna like I was like when coins have better resources, we're gonna reach out to Elon, be like, "Yo, give us Starlink, brother.
Yeah, that's definitely
Just give us
something to
one
look out
satellite.
for.
You just aimed at us, and then we have good."
Yeah, yeah, definitely,
You know how much?
definitely. Um, Going a little bit back to perp dexes, because like it's such an interesting field. Because a lot of the times, like the early users of the perp dexes, they were mostly degens and stuff like that. But now we actually see a lot of quants, a lot of firms, a lot of like trading institutes, that are treating perp dexes really, really seriously. Could you like maybe share your thoughts on the market?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I personally don't use it. I tried Hyperliquid, and I think the last one I tried was Astra. I think both are quite interesting in that it gives you a sort of a centralized exchange, advanced trading experience, but you custody your own assets. I think that's really key in that you're not relying on a third party or a third party custodian. But to a certain extent, I think you still have to bridge your assets into the platform to basically to catch the efficiency. So I would say it's sort of like it's not a true DEX. It's still sort of still a lot of semi-centralized functionalities behind it. But it is the sort of I view it as a sort of a stepstone in the evolution of DEXs, and I do see sort of there's going to be more products in that space that's going to come out. Right, we've seen ones coming out on Solana. We see Coinbase working on investing a few. So I do see that sort of moving, and I think the way I view sort of perp dex is a little bit unique in that I view it as just sort of like USDT liquidity vis-a-vis what I call fiat-based liquidity, right? If you look at sort of the perp dexes, their main liquidity are stablecoin liquidity, right? It's like USDT or USDC, right? And if you look at the main liquidity on the offshore exchanges, there's USDT and USDC, right? So sort of ultimately, it's basically that group sort of compete against each other, right? Whereas they don't really compete with coins as much. And sort of coins, our liquidity is actually is in peso liquidity. Like we solve sort of the peso on ramp, off ramp, cash in, cash out issues. I think for retail users and for financial institutions. right? And hopefully, other corporates. So I think that's sort of the distinguishment that I see. But in terms of sort of like, trading from a pure trading perspective, I do see sort of perp dexes sort of, like one way sort of for them to capture value is that, you can, become, like one way that there's value capture from a user perspective is that you can provide liquidity. Like you can become market makers. You can become liquidity providers on those platforms. Although that's kind of highly risky too because of the highly volatile asset class that we have. But I think where the real change happens is when sort of the tokens that gets traded on these platforms, there is a larger percentage of, say, like Google tokens or Tesla tokens or Apple tokens vis-a-vis a lot of these sort of long tail tokens. Because the problem with crypto is that I see is that a lot of the tokens that gets listed, they tend to go this way, right? And when it tends to go this way, it's really hard for you to go long on that kind of stuff, right? Especially, and if you look at the market dynamic the last year or two, a lot of the tokens that got launched tend to go down this way, right? And I think we need, like, whereas for stocks, they'll go down, but then because there's a real business or assets behind it, they find floor and they start bouncing, right? And then that's where sort of the long shorts, the volatilities will come in. And I think we need to start thinking. And that's why I'm like, for us, we're looking at this and to be like, okay, I think the opportunity then it's changing, right? It's changing, and I do see sort of maybe the market will change. Maybe there's going to be more substance with AI now. I just think that the perp dexes itself is a very good tool in the evolution of trading, but its success will be determined as much by its technology as by the assets that's listed on these exchanges. I think that's the key.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. At the end of the day, it's about the asset and it's
The
about the
asset.
asset's performance. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Can users come and make money on your exchange, right? If users come and they constantly lose money, then they're going to exit the market. Like, you want users to be able to come at least have money making opportunities, right? And that was like one of the, I just still remember back in 2019, 2020, when I was at Binance, that was like, can we help our users make money, right? Can we find 100x tokens, right? And I think that's sort of the secrets to success to any exchange, right? Like, if you're Nasdaq, can they make money on your IPO, right? Like, can you find the next Nvidia, right? And I think a lot of these things, at the end of the day, people invest to seek return, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting take on the operations and the BD side of things, like which coins get listed, which coins really perform, which coins provide lead. And now, since we're talking a little bit about trading, of course, this is something I have to ask you directly because, like, a lot of traders, when they trade on local exchanges, of course, like one thing that always comes up is the margins and the fees. Do you think there's anything that can happen in the future that could help Coins.ph reduce those fees?
I think we've done a lot of work to reduce the fees already. I think right now, I think for the long tail tokens, I think those are kind of hard just given the volatility in the price. But I think for the more popular traded tokens, like for example USDT and USDC, I think we have the tightest spreads. We only have like a 3 to 5 bip spreads. I think in the buy sell price, and then also for Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, I think we're definitely the cheapest peso option. And then where we've also reduced the price on withdrawal. So we basically have the cheapest withdrawal fees. Our fees are probably lower, if at par with, with offshore exchanges for USDT and USDC withdrawal. And we support, large number of blockchains there as well. In going forward, what we hope to bring some of the USDT market so that we can actually, the price will be cheaper on sort of the stablecoin, markets. Because the problem with local fiat currency exchanges is that there's constant fluctuation. So I think it's hard to really it's hard to, it'll be hard to bring the price even lower. But I think, but on the order book, I think the price will always be low.
finally, our final question is, what are some of Coins.ph's plans nationally and Coins.xyz's plans internationally?
Yeah, nationally, we hope to bring PHPC back first quarter next year. So we hope to bring our stablecoin back, and then because we're still waiting sort of for the final, approval from our regulators. I think once we get that, I mean, you'll see a lot more partnership opportunities. And we like, for example, one of the campaigns that we did last year for PHPC was HODL on Earth. So you can effect by just holding PHPC on coins, you can effectuate almost like a 10%, 10 to 15%, annual return without sort of having any lockup on the PHPC. I think those are really good retail activity, especially in a sort of in a bear market like this. If you can just hold and get some yield through airdrops, I think those are great opportunities. And the other one is we hope to have new investment products next year. We hope to bring some of the margin trading and then maybe even tokenized securities on our platform next year.
This is Riverian Studios. Wei, thank you so much for your time.